Hi, when it comes to romantic relationships, if you struggle with codependency, this is probably one of your biggest troubling areas. We tend to do really well in most aspects of our life, but when it comes to romantic relationships, we just kind of feel like we fail over and over again, or they just don't work out for us, or we make our relationships a prison. So one way to kind of move away from that and move towards a healthy romantic relationship is to look at who it is we're choosing to be partners with or in partnership with. What makes a good partnership for us, and what is it supposed to look like? So one of the biggest keys is learning to find someone who has a similar value system as you. So you first would have to know, what is it that you value? What's important to you? What does a life you want to live look like with a partner? And then also understanding what the other person values and what they want their life to look like. We know that a shared value system is a good predictor of how far a relationship is going to go. So people who have similar values, they tend to have a less rocky road, and they tend to stay together longer than couples who try to get together who do not share a similar value system. It doesn't mean that if you don't have a similar value system, it won't work, but it does mean it's less rocky and you tend to go farther when you have a shared value system. If you have differences in values, you would have to learn to respect the difference and also learn how to accommodate each other through these differences. So when you struggle with codependency, or when you have codependent traits, it can be an issue with romantic relationships and even friendships because we tend to move very fast. So we are meeting and committing before we really even understand who the other person is. We don't really know what their values are. We don't really know what it is they want from life. We haven't had time to watch them interact with other people. We haven't had time to see them disappointed, upset, stressed, to see how they sort of behave and manage life. We're committing, and then we're trying to figure out and make it work afterward when we don't even really know who the person is. So a great tip would be learn to go slow in your relationships, all of your relationships, not to get super close super fast, because you might be committing and bonding to someone who not only doesn't have a shared value system as you, but they might just not be good for you. They could even be unsafe for you. So that's one of the barriers we face when we struggle with codependency. Another one can be because we tend to really emphasize sameness, and then we minimize or disregard difference. So when we meet someone, it's really common for someone who struggles with codependency to say, they're just like me. They're just like us. They could be part of our family. And we're saying these things after knowing them maybe a day or maybe only even a week. So we really look for what is the same in this other person, and then I'm going to cling on to that and use that as my reason to develop a close relationship. And even when I see really loud differences, I tend to just not even acknowledge them. I can dismiss them, I can ignore them, or I can say it's really no big deal. So you almost have to fight yourself and not just focus on sameness, but really be open to identifying and recognizing what is different, right? And what are my top values? And is this aligning with that? So top ones to not ignore, I would recommend that we not ignore, or I think it's really important, marriage. So if you're really marriage driven, if marriage is what you want for your life, and you get with someone who doesn't really care about marriage, that could be an ongoing barrier. It doesn't mean it's a deal breaker unless you decide it is. But it can be an ongoing issue because every time the idea of marriage comes up, it could be a huge disappointment, right? Because to one person, maybe it's a piece of paper or nothing. And to the other person, this is so important. This is the one thing I've wanted my whole life. So you can already see how we're not going to be on the same page with marriage for the rest of our marriage, probably, because one really values it and the other one just does not. And no one's right or wrong. It's just different. So you could see how if I want to get married and I'm with someone who doesn't, every time I bring it up, it can be an irritation to that person. It could be annoying. They could not understand why I would even be entertaining this. And to me, it could be devastating and heartbreaking. Whereas if I find a partner who also values marriage, then when I bring up marriage, their eyes light up, right? They get just as excited as me, and they are just as interested in planning the wedding as me, moving forward in the marriage as me. They're going to see the marriage as important, the duration of the marriage. So you could see already, oh yeah, that's how it could be less of a rocky road if I get with someone who has a shared value system. Same thing, let's say I really value family, and I get with someone who doesn't really value family, and I say, hey, I want to go see my family on Sunday after, after church or after dinner. I want to stop by my parents' house. And if they're like, I don't understand why we always have to go there. Like, I'm not going there. I'm not spending my Sunday doing that, right? That would be a difference in values. Whereas someone who really values family, if I say I want to go to my family's later, then they're going to be like, oh, okay. And after, can we stop by mine? Right? I'm not going to always try to make them understand or try to explain to them why family is important. They're just going to understand why family is important to me because it's important to them. And then we're just talking about when we're going instead of fighting about who's right and who's wrong. So hopefully you can see how a difference in values can be a huge deal in a relationship, especially a close, intimate relationship like a romantic relationship. So one thing is, just to kind of reflect back, it's not going fast so we can really find out, first of all, who is this person and what is it that they value? And then also understanding, where our values are different, excuse me, and where our values are similar. And then we're looking at things like marriage, children, family. The other thing is, sometimes when we struggle with codependent traits, we can try to convince our partner to take on our values, right? Rather than just believing that this is what they value. Because remember, when we see that difference, we tend to dismiss it or minimize it. So we may think, oh, they're going to come around, or, oh, well, when they meet my family, they're going to love them as much as me and want to be there. We have all different types of ways of sort of convincing ourselves that it's no problem and that this person's going to come around. When really towards the end of the relationship, they're usually screaming, I told you this from the beginning, that this is not who I am. And when we struggle with codependency, it's kind of like, no, you didn't. But then when we really think about it, we're like, oh yeah, they did. They did. They actually told us that from the beginning. How did I miss that, right? So it's really hard. So first of all, get to know what it is that you value. And the next one is also get to know what it is that they want and what it is they value. What do you want for your life? What is it that is important to you, right? It could be things like a strong work ethic. Maybe that's really important to you. Maybe it's not important to you. But you could see where if someone has a strong work ethic and they get with someone who doesn't really care about a work ethic, that is going to be an ongoing issue probably within the relationship. Same thing with children. If you really value children and maybe you get with someone who doesn't really value children, right? Then it's going to be you're on two different pages, especially if you're trying to raise children together, or if one of you is wanting children and the other one's not really wanting children. So those are big things to look at and to understand prior to committing to a relationship, right? We don't commit and then try to figure those things out, because that usually tends to make a lot of heartbreak, and we can drag, people in unintentionally and cause a lot of misery for everyone. So it's best to go slow, get to know yourself. What is it you want for your life? What is it that you value? And then also get to know the other person. What is it that they want for their life? And what is it that they value? And then don't ignore difference, right? Don't emphasize sameness and dismiss difference. Really take a look at difference and ask them about those things that are different, right? You said you're really not interested in marriage. What does that mean to you? Does that mean you never want to get married? Does that mean that you've just never saw good marriages? What exactly does that mean that you're not interested in marriage? So you would really want to explore the difference, because that's what you're signing up for, and you want to make sure it's what you want. All of this comes from How to Stop Chasing Rejection. You can find the book on Amazon.com. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.